Welcome to Koloko Immigration, where we talk about immigration updates. Make sure that you don't forget to follow the page and click on the, obviously, you have to make sure that you click on the icon, of course. Now, my name is Annick Koloko, but let's get to it. Let's talk about what has been in the news here regarding immigration. Two things. As we know, the administration actually revokes. Here we're talking about the Department of Homeland Security. They revoked the Biden administration program that allow citizens of Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Haiti to live in the United States with a legal status. And number two, we'll be talking also about the upcoming agreement that will be reached between the IRS and the administration regarding the use of data of undocumented immigrants. Now, let's start and let's get into it. Now, number one, you have to understand that during the Biden administration, there was a large influx actually of migrants coming to the southern border. The administration tried to find a solution in order to really reduce the flow. And one of the solutions was actually to implement this particular program in order for people to be able to enter the United States legally and have a lawful status. Most of the people who were actually included in this program were countries where they have seen a large number of migrants crossing the southern border. Here they were actually talking about people from Venezuela, talking also about people from Nicaragua, Haiti, and Cuba. And under this particular program, then people will come and obviously have a lawful status, right? And that was actually something, and as a result, the number of people obviously showing at the border fell, obviously significantly. And that was very, very important. But of course, most of people who were included in this program represented about more than 500,000. Now, one thing that we know is that when the current administration arrived in the United States here, the president, they were very, very critical of this particular program. According to them, the border was not secure, and then people were not vetted properly, and they definitely were not very happy with this program. And the first thing that they did was actually to pause the program on the first day, meaning President Trump actually put a pause, meaning that people will not be able to use what is called the CHNV program. And now the question at the time was whether people will find themselves facing deportation. Now we have the answer. Now the Department of Homeland Security has indicated that the program actually has been revoked, meaning that if you are a person that was admitted to the United States under the CHNV program, then you need to understand that this program does not exist anymore, meaning that the status that you have that allow you to work and live in the United States does not exist anymore. What does that mean? It means that the people actually affected have up to, obviously they're talking here up to April 26th, they have 30 days to depart the United States. The administration is encouraging people to self-deport. Now, self-deport is actually more complex than that. But let's see exactly what are your options here. Because some of you do have options, but you need to act fast. Now, what are the options that are actually available to you? Number one, are you afraid to return to your country? If that is the case, you have the right to apply for what is called asylum, withholding of removal, and Convention Against Torture. Meaning that you're saying basically to the government, I cannot return to my country because I will be facing persecution, and that could be under different category, right? Under the legal technical language, say different grounds, right? There are 5 grounds. Meaning, just to give you a few, based on, obviously, religious belief, that's one of it, or maybe political opinion, that's another, meaning that there are several other grounds, or maybe you belong to a particular social group. You need to make sure that, okay, if you think that you may face harm if you were to return to your country, you should pursue that. There is no reason why you should not, right? Number two, some of you may be eligible to adjust their status to pursue a way to remain here in the US, based on family ties. For example, if you are married to a US citizen, you're the spouse of a US citizen, you definitely should pursue this avenue, but you have to remember, you have to show that your marriage was entered in good faith, that the reason you're pursuing this avenue is not just because you want to avoid deportation. Even though that will be actually also something that may happen, it cannot be the main reason, right? Be careful about that. Also, for example, if you have a child who is a US citizen over the age of 21, you may be eligible also to have your green card. Or maybe if you happen that you have your parents who are US citizens, they may file for you, right? Of course, you may be thinking, what about if my spouse is a lawful permanent resident, if it's a green card holder? Or maybe my parent is a green card holder, right? That's a little bit trickier, right? Because the government doesn't look at you as somebody who is what is called really somebody who is an immediate relative. They give priority to relative of US citizen. If you're not an immediate relative, then it's going to take a little bit longer, and that may not be helpful. But of course, you will have to check with an attorney. But these are avenues that you may consider, as you're facing this particular issue. Okay. Now, let's say you don't have that. You have nothing, right? What's going to happen if you don't depart? One thing that we know for sure, the administration is going to continue using all the resources at their disposal in order to make sure that they can actually, go after people who are in the United States illegally and see how they can have them deported. That's a fact that we know it's going to occur. Now, if that's the case, except if you have a final order of deportation, then you may find yourself now before an immigration judge. Being before an immigration judge is not a bad thing. It depends on what you have as a defense. You will find yourself, you will have the opportunity to defend yourself against deportation. But now I know that you probably heard a lot of things, like when you read the headlines, it's a very, very scary time where you may be thinking about what's the point, I will be deported no matter what. But you have to remember, the government still has to make their case. They still have to show, okay, this person should be actually deported. And the judge has to listen and look and see if you have a way to actually, defend yourself against deportation. And again, let's say you have families, like we discussed earlier, or maybe you're facing persecution, but you may actually present this to the court and say that, okay, these are how I'm going to defend myself against deportation. But those are the things that you have to keep in mind. Of course, be careful about any infraction, any obviously crimes that you may have committed, because nowadays it's very, very, dangerous. Why? Because that could trigger deportation so quickly you will not even, you won't even understand, right? Meaning, be very careful. We'll be talking about this in other videos about how, crimes and, infraction and things can actually land you in deportation. Just the things that you have to be mindful, you have to keep in mind. Now, other things that we're going to talk about here is actually, this is another tool. We talked earlier about the tool. How will the government know exactly where you are? How do they know that, okay, you are present in the United States? Remember, a few weeks ago, the government now is asking everybody to be registered, right? They have to. You cannot be in the United States and not be registered. That's a tool for the government to be able to track people who are in the United States who are not citizens of the country. Now, most of people, if you already been applying, you receive immigration benefit, like those of you who were under this CHNV program under the Biden administration, you're already in the system. They already have, obviously, your fingerprint, meaning you don't need to be registered. But that allowed the government to have that information. But now there is another tool that has been added in order for the government to pursue their immigration policies, is actually to have access to the data from the IRS. And that's actually what we want to talk about. Now, The government has indicated that they are actually almost, they will be reaching an agreement with the IRS. What is the IRS? Is the Internal Revenue Services. Most of you know about the IRS because every year we have to file our taxes, right? Meaning that that's how people get familiar with the IRS. But one thing that people don't realize is that for people who are in the United States and don't have a lawful status, meaning they are undocumented, they need also to file their taxes. They're working, they're living in the United States, and they want to make sure that they file their taxes. Unfortunately, given their status, they cannot have a social security number. But the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, the code allow them to ask for what is called actually an individual taxpayer number, an ITN, right? Meaning that they will get that particular number. The number of digits is quite similar to the social security number, and that's how they will move forward. Most of the time is why they actually, seeking, to adjust their status, or either throughout the whole period of time where they do not have a status. Now, you can imagine that this particular data, when we talk about data, that is actually with the administration, with the agency. You think about all of the agency of the government, most of those data are protected by privacy law, meaning that it is not a data that will be shared easily. And you can tell because if you go, for example, to the Social Security Administration website and you're trying to get your own information, you're not just going to send them a text or an email or things like that. No, you're going to have to go through a rigorous process in order for you to be able to access your data. And most of the time they will send you a mail, to make sure that to verify that you are the person who you pretend to be. Now imagine the same rigorous process applied for people whose information, most of us, right, are with the IRS. But now the government is asking the IRS to share that particular data. In the past, the only time the IRS will share data about the taxpayer was probably in criminal matters, because obviously if it's a criminal matters, then obviously there is an interest, in the pursuit of justice to share that particular information. And then people, it is actually in the code. You may not remember that, but when you use, obviously you use the system, then you agree that your information may be shared, in the pursuit, obviously of any litigation. Here we're talking about criminal cases. Now, the big change will be that this now is going to be applied even to civil cases, because immigration is civil law. Yes, it is civil law. It is not a criminal matter. That's why you probably heard that you don't have the right to an attorney actually paid by the government. Why do you think that is? It's because immigration is considered civil law. But if it was, for example, a matter where your liberty is at stake, then you, under the law, have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, you probably also, if you watch TV, you see when they give this, what is called the Miranda warnings, right? That's exactly right. But now the government is about to reach this agreement with the IRS. The IRS will share the data of the taxpayer, and the government will be able to access this particular data and to identify those of you who are actually undocumented. This is a great departure from previous policy. It's a great departure from privacy law, but this is exactly where we are. Meaning that's going to allow the government to really go everywhere and just look and see, okay, this particular information specifically for people who have an individual taxpayer number, that it is more likely than not that this particular person is probably somebody who is undocumented. And this is how this actually will go forward. Meaning that those something that I definitely want to make sure that you guys understand. Those are actually a big departure. It's a big matter. I just wanted for you to be aware of that. But thank you so much for watching this video. We will be keeping you informed and obviously posting other video. But until then, don't forget, of course, to follow the page, to share, to click, obviously, you know, on the page and make sure that you become a member. Thank you so much for watching, and until then, be well. Goodbye.